YouTube, welcome back to another Q&A video. This one was popular last time, so I wanted to come back and do another one. Let's get straight into it with question one. What are my thoughts on buying properties with cash, then refinancing later? What are the pros? What are the cons? You see, I do really like this question, and I do actually really like buying properties cash if I can. So I'm slightly biased, but I'm going to try and obviously share both sides of the coin with you. So start with the pros. There's two main benefits to purchasing with cash. Number one being that, of course, if we buy cash, we no longer have a requirement for a mortgage or a bridging loan, particularly if we're buying something that needs a refurb. So we take out the finance element, which can be quite expensive once you add in, obviously, the monthly amount, but once you actually add in the arrangement fees, the application fees, but even more than that is the time that they take up as well. So that's one of the main benefits, is getting rid of those. And then the other one is all about that speed. It's all about that time element that I just mentioned. It's speed and it's the flexibility of choices, because now when you find a property and you go to your solicitor, well, your solicitor is reporting to get all of the information, but just for you. The solicitor is just there to satisfy the things they want to know, and then they want to report it to you, but they are not there having to try and satisfy certain questions and certain elements on behalf of a lender. And of course, this means that you can move much faster forward and hopefully take advantage of purchasing property quicker, doing the refurb quicker, maybe even refinancing quicker. So it's a definite couple of benefits there. On the other side, on the con side, there are less cons in my opinion, but one of the main cons when it comes to buying cash is the opportunity cost to tying up that level of money. Because of course you are tying up a large amount of capital, you are committing that amount to a project, and instead of putting in, a deposit, the refurb amount and the fees, you're now putting in the whole purchase price plus the refurb amount plus the fees. So you're tying up a much more substantial amount of capital, and we don't know how long that's going to be tied up for, whether it's 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. So there is an element of time that is tied up for, and there's an element of opportunity cost if you are trying to rapidly grow a portfolio, but now you've allocated all funds to one project instead of dividing it up into maybe 2 or 3 different projects. So I hope that answers that question. I could go into much more detail, but hopefully that leaves you with enough information there. The next question is there a way around the 6-month rule when refinancing a property? Now, this is an unusual one. This slightly stumped me when I first read it. Is there a way around the 6-month rule when refinancing a property? And what really someone is alluding to there is the fact that when you purchase a property, during the first 6 months of ownership, you shouldn't really refinance it, or certainly there are a lot of lenders that don't want you to refinance it during that ownership, whether that means refinancing off of another product, another mortgage or bridging product, or whether that is simply you bought it cash, but you haven't yet owned it for 6 months. Why it stumped me when I read this is because there is no way around it other than to just go to lenders and ask to refinance early. If you simply want to refinance after 3 months of ownership, well, you just talk to your mortgage broker and start that process. Just be aware of the fact that there are a lot less lenders available, because anything pre-6 months, some lenders don't want to touch. So there's a lot less lenders. The lenders that are there might have much stricter criteria, and they might also charge you a higher interest rate. So be fully aware of that. Whereas it might actually be worth you waiting, comparing it to products that are available for you after 6 months of ownership, because there's more products available, it's easier to get the mortgage, and the rates are hopefully lower because you're out of that window. Now, the other thing just to mention here, for anyone that is thinking of doing a pre or post 6-month refinance, is if you go for a refinance pre 6 months, they're going to purely look at what you paid plus how much you've spent, and they're going to want to see all the evidence of why that property is now uplifted in value. Whereas if you go for post 6 months, they are more looking at the market value of the property. They're less concerned about what you paid, less concerned about what you spent on it, more concerned about what's the going rate for this property, what's the market value of this property. So again, just be wary of that when making a decision whether to refinance early or waiting a little bit longer. Now, moving on to the next question, which is actually a sourcing question. You've agreed a property deal and you found an investor. What are the next steps? So presuming this person is just getting into sourcing and they're just trying to find their bearings. Now there is two main elements to any sourcing transaction. First of all, the property deal itself, and then secondly, the investor, the person that's going to potentially buy that deal. So we obviously have to marry them up. That has to be the first part of the sourcing deal, the sourcing transaction. But once that has been, married up together, once it's been found and matched together, well, the next part, of course, is the paperwork. It's getting everything agreed, and there's a few things involved there. First of all, it's the terms and conditions. You want to make sure that everything is clearly laid out in black and white, in easy terms for people to see and read and then sign off on. So terms and conditions for the sourcing service being delivered is one. Any fee that is involved and that is being settled up front as part of this sourcing transaction. Any compliance work, of course, if you are a sourcing business, you need to be a compliant and registered business. There's multiple different elements to that. Then you have to make sure that anyone that's coming through your doors as an investor, as a customer, has been fully checked and has the anti-money laundering checks done on them. That is something that we have to do as the sourcing business as part of our compliance. So terms and conditions, any fee being paid, any compliance, and then of course what we're going to need to do is then instruct solicitors and make sure they start communicating with one another. So the way we do that, of course, is the memorandum of sale, and that kicks off the whole process. That kicks off the solicitors talking, means that we can continue to monitor that during the process between now and then exchange of contracts. So that is the next step. I mean, there's a whole host of other things that need to be done, but that is it in simple terms. The next things that you need to be thinking about and focusing on. Next question, what can I do with £30,000 capital? I always get one relating to capital, but I love to include them, whether it's £0, whether it's £100,000, or like in this scenario, whether it's £30,000. I like to give my opinion on what I would potentially do or the options I have available with that amount of money. So with this week's one, it's what can I do with £30,000 capital? I would say quite quickly that you are somewhat limited, because if you want to do the buy, refurbish, refinance strategy, or if you want to do flips, if you want to somehow make a profit margin, you are probably going to need more capital, even when investing in properties within the north or certainly cheaper parts of the UK. And that is because you're going to need in the region of 40, 50 or 60,000 pounds for the deposit, the fees and the refurbishment. Certainly a minimum of 40 or 45,000 is probably going to be required, and that's if you have a small refurbishment. Of course, if you forget those strategies, because let's say that perhaps they are slightly out of our reach currently, we've got £30,000, what can we do with that? Well, of course, we can try some of the strategies which require little or no money, which is sourcing or rent to rent. There are easy ones to box off there because they, of course, will probably need less than £10,000 to get you started and get you off the ground. Whereas if you are just thinking, what can I buy? I want an asset. I want something to tangibly own in relation to this £30,000 capital. I think you're quite limited, and that is to one type of property. That is a single let, buy to let property that is ready to go, ready to rent. And if that is what you decide to purchase, then I would purely focus on two things. That is A, buying at a good price, so trying to get a bit of a discount below market value. And B, I would be looking to make sure that it cash flows well. So I wouldn't be buying something with an older tenant paying not much in rent. I'd be looking for something where I can get a new tenant in there at market rent and hopefully make as much profit as possible. So £30,000, turnkey buy-to-let investment, below market value with a good profit margin. I hope that helps. Next question, what are your predictions, Justin, for mortgage rates over the next 12 months? Well, you've sticked it to me with this one because now I have to make a prediction, but that is what it is. I believe, do not hold me to this, I believe that we will continue to see rates increase over the upcoming couple of months towards the tail end of 2023. So that's Q3, Q4. I believe there may even be one additional raise left in the Bank of England. And that will, of course, continue to impact the buy-to-let mortgage market and the residential market. But I do believe and speculate that come mid-2024, we will start to see an easing of rates. I don't think anything will change until then. In fact, I think we might continue to go up slightly. I think then we might plateau. but I think at some point, mid to late 2024, we may actually start to see an easing of rates. I don't think it will be much. I don't think it will be dramatic, but I think we will start to see rates slowly ease off. I don't think we'll ever get back to the 3% rates for a long time that we saw, within recent years. But if we could get ourselves back to a 4%, 4.5%, well, a lot of the investments would do incredibly well just from getting back to that level. That's my prediction. I'm not going to say any more than that because there's so many variables, but that was an interesting one. Thank you. Next question being, at what interest rate do you think that buy-to-let properties are no longer viable? Wow, I like this one. And yeah, I have something in here which I believe is a percentage in which I think property and buy-to-let is no longer viable. Of course, just to caveat, this is not the same for HMOs, service accommodation and kind of strategies like that. This is purely buy-to-let, single-let properties. And for me, that is 7%, okay? When we go above 7% interest rates, I believe that the profitability of buy-to-lets is squeezed too much and is no longer viable. It then becomes more risky in a lot of elements than it is actually just to hold the money in the bank and see what happens. Because at 7%, we just don't make enough profit. The ROI is down, the monthly profit is down, and therefore if anything comes up, all of our profit is wiped out. We don't want it to be costing us to hold an asset, should we say. And therefore, of course, once it goes a level above that, kind of 8%, that's where a lot of banks stress test is 8 or 8.5% interest rates. And there's a reason for that. And that's because most properties will stop profiting above 8.5%. Most of them then start to fall into the negative. And that's why they stress test to that level. But I actually think one step earlier than that, I think 7% is where buy-to-let becomes very difficult. It's no longer viable. And actually anything under that, 6, 6.5, again, it's squeezed, it's hard, but it's just about doable, just about profitable. It's when we get above that 7% and beyond. And that is it. Another Q&A video wrapped up. We've smashed them out quickly. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you being here and I look forward to seeing you in a future video.